Well, a federal court has struck down Title IX in 6 states. Those are the 6 states that sued to stop it. Now, this is the law that the Biden administration put into place to destroy women's rights in education. The states now that have this, they no longer have to implement them, meaning this would be a good place to go to college, ladies, is Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. Now, look how this opinion, this court decision started. This is shocking, right? In the year 2024, that a court has to say this and that they had the ovaries to say it.
They had the balls to say it.
The lack of balls to say it. This is the opinion. There are 2 sexes, male and female. That's how the court puts down this ruling. Now, why do they have to say this in the year 2024? Because we don't know that by default any longer. But they lay out the fact that Title IX was meant to give women an advantage that they don't already have in certain places. For instance, some sports are more popular for men, so women don't get the funding for their sports. Historically, colleges had more resources, let's say for dormitories or classrooms for boys. So Title IX made it so that the schools would have to invest equally so that women had equal opportunity in sports, in scholarship, in housing, in study programs, all of this. Now, the states had argued that, what the Biden administration wanted to do was say that Title IX programs could be used by men whose gender identity was women. So you no longer had to be a biological woman to take advantage of these programs, which meant that men can and do self-identify into programs where they would have these advantages that were not meant for them. They were meant for biological women. And the states had argued that forcing them to expand the definition of biological sex to gender identification would violate their First Amendment right to define women as women. And the court ruled that the states correctly argued that the new rule redefining sex to include gender identity would violate government employees' First Amendment rights and is the result of arbitrary and capricious rulemaking. And if the new rule is allowed to take effect in August, all plaintiffs will suffer immediate and irreparable harm. So they were not really arguing this on behalf of the women. They took a really interesting tact and said, yes, but we have the right to say this is a man. We don't play into that person's identity. And they argued it on that behalf. Now, Title IX also, the Biden Title IX, so we're talking about 2 Title IXs. The Biden version had said that you can punish people for not using preferred pronouns. And we're going to look at that in a second. Now, again,
So
go ahead.
I could just decide I want to go to college. I'm a college kid. I just got out of high school.
Yeah.
I'm going to identify as a woman so that I can go live in women's dorms.
Yes,
I can
you
shower
could.
with women.
Yes,
I can
you
do
could.
all that stuff. And then when I graduate, take my degree and be back a man again.
You could do that, I suppose. Your degree would have your preferred name on it. So I don't know if
That's true.
That would, if you want to,
Yeah.
you'd have to choose an androgynous name. But also, yes, you could also use women's scholarships as well and fellowships, and you could apply for those and win them as well. And we saw in the Supreme Court case that struck down, where you get into school by your nationality. Oh my God.
What, affirmative
action? Yes, that was not coming in. We saw in the court case against affirmative action how administrators use diversity as if it's candy, like, ooh, let's trade this one for that one. And they're looking for the most diverse candidate to put into their program. So you know that transgender is a card in the sort of woke victimology game, right? That light behind me just went off. So again, what am I saying? Is that Title IX would destroy this for women. So I think in order to go over what Title IX would do under the Biden administration, I'm going to leave it to the redhead libertarian to explain it because she does it so eloquently.
So according to Riley Gaines, the Biden regime has just abolished Title IX as we know it. Sex now equals gender. This means that men can now take athletic scholarships from women. Men can now take academic scholarships from women. Men will have full access to women's spaces on campus. This includes their bathrooms and their locker rooms. Men will now be housed in dorms with women. Student and faculty will have their speech compelled to respect pronouns of these individuals. If you ignore these guidelines, if you question these guidelines, you can be charged with harassment. So I only have one question. Where the are these bitches? What are you doing? Where the is your sea of pink? You know what's worse than having to drive out of state to get your health care? Abolishing the equal protection of women, forcing women to undress in front of men, not letting them question that because they'll be sued, compelling their speech, stripping them of their victories, stripping them of their medals, stripping them of their scholarships, violating their spaces, violating their due process. You can still get your abortions. Make a road trip out of it. I don't give a but you're no longer a woman according to the Biden regime. This has been stripped away from you by subpar men. Parade about that. Wear your pink hats about that. Hug each other about that. Cry about that. Get mad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just like libs of TikTok yesterday. I mean, posted a family was allegedly kicked out of an Angel City Beer in Los Angeles because a mother complained about a man invading a woman's bathroom, and the restaurant says it's against their policy to disagree with a person's trans person identity. Mm-hmm. So now that's exploded. I mean, this is, why is like libs of TikTok the only one getting mad about it?
Yeah.
Like we need the pink hats back and doing their job.
Right. So what she talks about due process is really interesting because the new Title IX, the Biden Title IX. Now we're going to have two versions of Title IX. The Title IX that will revert to the old version in these 6 states, and then presumably the other states will be enforcing the Biden version. And in the Biden version of Title IX, you don't have due process. We return to what's called kangaroo courts. What that means is under the Trump administration, Secretary Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary, she changed Title IX to allow anyone who is ever accused of a Title IX violation to have a real investigation. So you're supposed to be notified of your offense, showed the evidence against you, and allowed a live hearing and a cross-examination. But before this, in the Obama years and before, Title IX violators were subject to a single university investigator, and they were not allowed to defend themselves. So Trump put in due process, not Trump specifically, but Betsy DeVos, and then the Biden administration, for whatever reason, decided, no, that was good. Let's go back to that. So in fact, they put back the Title IX kangaroo courts. And the Biden administration says, yeah, that's good. Let's leave it. So what that means, like, because now the Biden version of Title IX says that you have to use preferred pronouns, if you are shown misgendering somebody or using their dead name or whatever it is they want to accuse you of, you can no longer defend yourself. Here's a list that FIRE, the free speech advocacy group, put together. It says they jettison the requirement of unwelcome conduct and harassment, and that it be severe and pervasive. So instead, anyone who says that you sexually offended them in any way will be accused of harassment. They no longer require schools to provide a hearing at which students could cross-examine the accusers, allow colleges to use just a single investigator, scrap the requirement that the accused be guaranteed access to evidence against them. So you get no due process. So you can think about, you send your nice kid to school. Maybe they have a problem with a man in the women's dressing room, and your daughter maybe says this to somebody. They accuse her of being transphobic and put her in front of a kangaroo court. She can't defend herself. She can't know what evidence they have. And then she's got her reputation ruined for life because of this now kangaroo court that will happen in Biden's version of Title IX, but not in these 6 states.
And if she's not entitled to know the evidence, then that means there could be none.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because who would know it if they don't present it?
You're right. That's absolutely right. And it's just a single investigator. It's not a person it doesn't even have to be trained in any kind of justice or criminal justice or anything like that. It could just be this sort of DEI hire that is looking out for offenses and is just, I mean, you could, in theory, even look back through someone's social media and decide, oh, they were a proponent of J.K. Rowling. Let's look out for this athlete. Or, oh, they liked Riley Gaines. Well, that already puts a target on their back, and then go after them. And who will be doing this investigating? Here is former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos saying it's a U-turn to the bad old days where sexual misconduct was sent to campus kangaroo courts and not resolved in a way that actually sought justice. And so that's what this single investigator model is. It returns adjudications to the preponderance of the evidence standard, where essentially a coin flip about guilt or innocence can remove a student from campus or tarnish their reputation for life. And again, we know that this is giving power to the accusers. And again, this, the weaponization of transphobic, homophobic, whatever it is, as soon as a man is in a single space and you don't want that, you're called transphobic. And then what can happen to you? So universities are staffed for this, though, because they've hired more DEI and diversity hires in the last decade than professors. That is single-handedly why tuition is going up in American universities. It's not because they've invested in education. They have not. They're investing in these other programs. In fact, this week I was reading a book called It's Not Free Speech, and these idiots argue that in addition to DEI investigative groups, we also should have free speech investigative groups. And if a professor says something you don't like, needs to go through that committee. So they're arguing for even more administrators. But this was interesting. They say, with no proof at all, nothing in this book had any proof, it was awful, that DEI officers have a high burnout rate, that they just get tired of recommending that all these tenured professors be punished. And then the universities don't punish tenured professors because they have tenure. And so that's a really hard job to be a DEI administrator in the universities. Do you hear the violins for them?
I'm so sad about that.
Poor people.
Isn't that interesting? High burnout rate, they say. But that's costing you your tuition. So that's interesting. So again, if you want to go to college, ladies, I might look into these 6 states where you have access to single-sex spaces still. Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. Your state at least sued to protect your rights. The other states are guilty of being a fake feminist, as this person put it on Twitter. I really like this. Shout out to the feminists that worked hard for equal rights and protection for women, only to vote for people that are taking those rights away from their own daughters. Hashtag Title IX. So if your state was not one of these, maybe talk to your representatives and see why not.